Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, indeed, that you know what that means. The Sumatra Mandelian, it is permeating the air here in the studios at Alladay Mobile Media. Thanks for tuning in this morning. Boy, do we have a lot to unpack today. Before we do that, I need to address something, a kind of a little disclaimer, if you will. I use many people's clips. They're either sent to me by somebody. I always thank, you hear me giving thanks to somebody. Those are people who have sent clips, done something in social media where I harvest their information. And I always say thanks. And there's a big slide in here of thank you today, and I'll make sure it runs for a minute so everybody can see. The process is done like this. The information will be sent to me. I'll see something somewhere in social media and I'll grab it and I'll notify that person right on the spot. I am using this in my next podcast. Thank you. I have yet to have anybody say, no, you cannot do that. Perhaps it is because of the cause. It is patriotic. It is a patriotic cause that I do what I do. White Rabbit Media does what they do. Drone Tech Politics does what they do. OAN reports in the manner they do. Newsmax reports in the manner they do. They bring you the truth. Look to more independent news networks. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, the media, the 1,500 media outlet publications, all that stuff, 6 people own them. Talk about a propaganda network. Very simple to do. Let's get into some stuff you're going to see in some of these clips today. You're going to hear talk about the Dominion system, how easy it is to be manipulated, how the Dominion system is a Canadian company who uses Smartmatic technology that goes into Venezuela, that went to Barcelona, that went to Frankfurt and stored our citizens' voting data. Why is that happening? Excuse me? Nobody's asking that question. Nobody's outraged enough to... I want you to think about this for just a minute. You're 50 years old. You have a 30-year-old daughter who has an 18-year-old grandson who all voted. All that information has gone into Venezuela through Barcelona, into Frankfurt. Your address, your phone number, who you are, who you voted for. Let that sink in. Why is nobody outraged? Why is nobody screaming about it? And what I really, really am dumbfounded about, and I think all of us should be questioning this. Remember that Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren, Amy Klobuchar, who chastises everybody with that little funny smirk and little upset. Well, that should be me sitting in the chair, not you, Amy Barrett. Yes. Ron Wyden and Mark Pocan, these were all Democratic senators who questioned this voting process technology in 2018. Why did they question it then? And they're not questioning it now. They're saying, oh, nothing to see here. Turn away, look away, look away, look away. There is nothing to see here. Everything is okay. It's all above board. Why is Brennan Clapper et al. Coming out of the woodwork screaming that Donald Trump is unstable? Once again, he is unstable, and he's going to do unmentionable things to the whole world. He's going to mess the apple cart up. Oh, my God. He is going to create more peace. He's not going to start a war. He's unstable. I believe the word's treason. I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm not a constitutional expert. But I do believe that is called sedation. I don't understand how, with all the evidence that is there, that nobody can say there is not something questionable going on. You have 90% of the systems in the country are Dominion. I've got reports from Nevada, reports from California, reports from Texas, reports from all over the place. People are saying, hey, look, we went to go vote and we didn't we had to go somewhere else to vote. And when we got there, they had different voting machines. And oh, by the way, the voting machines happened to be Dominion. And a lot of these places that are in question are all the swing states. Funny how that works. It's also funny how in 2018, Nancy Pelosi on one of the lackey late night talk shows guaranteed the Democrats would be taking the House over. It's funny how Nancy Pelosi said whether he knows it or not, he's leaving the White House in January. With conviction. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. They have telegraphed this the entire time. And remember, once again, ladies and gentlemen, please go look at Socialism 101. The biggest obstacle to socialism, private property ownership, that includes small business. The governments control everything in socialism. They distribute everything in socialism. I want you to think about that for just a minute when you start hearing about these mandates to lock you down, these mandates that are not laws that want you to wear a mask, these mandates that say you can't have your family and friends to your home for Thanksgiving. You can't go to church on Sunday. But BLM and Antifa can go by the tens of thousands of people and destroy cities. And, well, of course, they all have masks on because they're cowards and they want to cover their face so nobody can see who they are, while they attack and beat women from the back and smack retired people in the back of the head. Not a one. I've yet to see one of them. The only time I saw one of them try to confront somebody, they both got knocked out by a guy in his 60s. So, and he was a vet. Thank you for your service. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to the morning clips I have just for you.
Things we believed all were conceived to keep us from being awake. Lies we were sold, truths never told, to keep us from being awake. Like sheep we easily stray, engrossed in distractions. When we question why, the harder they try to keep us from being awake. The screams and the cries, the sun slowly rise, the opening of eyes we wake, removal of fear as things become clear, the freedom is near. We wake, tell those who still aren't aware, the chains have been broken, so many lost. Remember the cost, the price that was paid. We wait. Truth can't be unlearned, we'll never return. The people have spoken, we're awake.
Already in use. Jacob, tell me who these hackers are and what they're finding.
This is a very paranoid scene here, Ali. We're among some of the greatest hacking minds in the country, people who've been brought together by, above-board companies to try to be as creative as they can and as insidious as they can in attacking systems like you see behind me. These are some of the most common systems used as of 2018 in elections, and so they're here to really test this stuff out.
All righty.
Ability that they discovered.
Well, one of the big vulnerabilities we're definitely seeing here is just the incredible, the dated nature of this technology. It is extremely old. A lot of it dates from the 90s. And what's one of the most alarming things to me is that a lot of the equipment you see behind me, well, in fact, all of the equipment you see behind me was not, in fact, provided by the companies. Companies like ES&S and Dominion, which are the top manufacturers of voting equipment, they had to buy this stuff on eBay and through government surpluses. That's what the organizers told me here. And so the idea that we have to sort of pull this stuff in order to test it out without the cooperation of the companies involved is really quite alarming. But considering the kind of sophistication I've seen, we have all of our phones off. Even the wait staff here in Las Vegas has been told not to have their phones on while this conference is going on. The idea that they're going to then go at this kind of dated equipment is pretty alarming.
Jake, cybersecurity companies that are involved in this, banking, they spend billions of dollars on cybersecurity. Are the kinds of resources necessary to protect voting systems available to election officials in this country?
Well, this is what's so alarming about being here is that you see teams literally of hundreds of hackers in the employ of companies like IBM to be a sort of think tank, a skunk works, for discovering the latest trends in hacking. Well, an election official barely has the money for a single IT consultant, much less anybody coming in to try to imagine what could go wrong if we went at these guys. So for me, the gap here between the billions being spent on cybersecurity across the country by private actors and the fact that they had to buy this equipment on eBay just to test it out, I think that tells you everything you need to know.
And when you lay all this out, and you're going to do this in court, do you have what you think is irrefutable evidence that will make up the minds of millions of American people?
Well, the burden of proof in court is only a preponderance of the evidence. Mm-hmm. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the criminal standard. But frankly, with everything we've got, these should be criminal prosecutions at a significant level for fraud and conspiracy to defraud provable beyond a reasonable doubt. There are hundreds of thousands of people in our criminal system right now in prison who were convicted on far less evidence of guilt than we have here.
Sidney Powell, I want you to react to something that this Republican senator from Pennsylvania, Pat Toomey, just said in reaction to the district court judge's decision. The district court judge is someone who's very close to Pat Toomey. Senator Toomey says that President Trump has now, quote, exhausted all plausible legal options to challenge the result of the presidential race in Pennsylvania. Is that true?
No, that's not true at all.
Can you explain why the senator's wrong?
To fight.
Can you explain why is the senator wrong?
Well, he's wrong because Pennsylvania was one of the hotbeds of many varieties of fraud and criminal acts that the Department of Justice, frankly, should be in there prosecuting. And we're going to dump a whole lot of them into evidence in our fraud case that we're going to file in Pennsylvania.
Why do you think the Justice Department isn't being more aggressive in following up on what you see?
I think the Justice Department has known about this issue for a long time and turned a blind eye to it.
Why, though?
I wonder how much the CIA actually had a role in starting this kind of program to begin with, use on other countries.
Why would Donald Trump's Justice Department not be interested in this?
Well, I wish Donald Trump had as much control over the Justice Department as people think he does. It's taken on a life of its own. I don't think even Bill Barr has the control over the Justice Department that he would like to have, because there are so many lawyers in so many different places doing whatever it is they want to do and ignoring the standards and practices that historically created the Justice Department to seek justice and not convictions. I mean, I wrote a book about that back in 2014. We've been on this increasingly bad path for decades now, and it's done nothing but get worse because nobody's told the truth and stood up for the truth. But Americans are now. They're livid about this, and they could see it. Everybody saw it election night. They saw votes being subtracted from President Trump and appearing on the Biden side of the scale. And that's exactly what this Dominion system was designed to do. And we have eyewitness testimony to its entire creation for that very purpose.
There have been warnings about this system. We were talking about it earlier, Sidney. I mean, you had Senators Warren and Klobuchar that made a big stink about the 2018 midterms, saying that they don't trust Dominion, that they saw evidence that votes could be switched using these systems. These are Democrats who ran for president. What I don't understand is how does this get ignored? I mean, this is a nationwide, this is a democracy shocking scandal, if it is true.
It is.
And it's so big, I can't even wrap my head around it. I just wonder, how does this happen?
Well, that's exactly how it happens, because it's so big, nobody wants to wrap their head around it. Nobody wants to untie all the little knots that go into it. Yeah. But we have to if we're going to be a constitutional republic. This cannot go on. Our votes must be counted fair and true. Every legal vote is entitled to be counted, and every illegal vote nullifies the vote of an American citizen and our public will of we the people. It's absolutely counter to everything this country was founded on. So we have got to get this fixed now. I can't unsee it. I'll tell you that. I certainly cannot unsee what I have seen. And I'm going to make sure everybody else knows everything I've seen too, because we've got to hold our government institutions accountable and do better than this by each other. And it does cut across both political parties. It cuts across generations now, or at least multiple decades of this kind of corruption. It's got increasingly more sophisticated.
Has anybody given you...
just smudge the edge of a ballot and stick it through the machine, and the ballot would be rejected. But now they can literally drag and drop hundreds of thousands of votes wherever they want them. I mean, everybody knew when they bought the system, and that was one of the features of the system. We've caught people lying now and saying that things that happened that ran people out of voting areas, and we've got tons of evidence. It's so much, it's hard to pull it all together.
How big of a, if this happened, how big of a conspiracy, how many people would have had to have been in on something like this?
Oh, gosh, probably thousands, including the people running the machines at each of the polling centers. We know, for example, that one of the higher-ups of Dominion went to Detroit the night of the election to handle things himself. And we also have evidence that there were any number of VPN lines open to the Internet for foreign actors to be meddling in it.
Has anybody given you an explanation that as to why they had to turn the machines off? You talk about how the machines got turned off, and then there was a vote dump.
Our witness from Venezuela, who saw it all created and how it worked, said that he knew as soon as the machines were turned off in those key states, it was because we, the people, in voting for Trump in a landslide election, had essentially broken the algorithm that had been pre-programmed into the machine. So they had to stop counting in those states and areas and backfill the vote with fraudulent mail-in ballots or whatever means they used to do it, whether they just injected numbers or trashed votes for Trump otherwise and changed the numbers. I don't know exactly how they did it right now in each spot, but that's essentially the way it worked.
IWO journalists. And we want to be your editors. Go ahead and text the red wave to 797979. That's the red wave to 797979. This movement will deplatform the deplatformers. If we text each other, call each other, email each other, we don't fucking need the media.
For 4 years, we listened to unsupported allegations of a conspiracy by a foreign government to interfere with our presidential election, that Russia stole the election of 2016, implanting their Russian asset, Donald Trump, as president of the United States. For 4 years, we were told Trump was a Putin puppet, a Russian asset, that we must do everything we can to get rid of him and save America. Almost on a daily basis, the Democrat medieval minstrels in Congress put on their conspiracy show as congressmen like Adam Schiff pontificated about real evidence, evidence that he had seen with his own eyes, evidence that required that Donald Trump be gone because America and democracy were at stake. Never, ever, not once did we see a scintilla of evidence. Never. Were we supposed to take it all on faith? They put the president and the country through hell as the work of Congress was halted and as the media every day reminded us we were getting closer and closer to the big Russian reveal of Russia collusion that fizzled much like Rob Mueller did when he showed up and testified. And then the medieval minstrels took another show down to the sub-basement of the Capitol, where they regaled each other with fantasies of foreign interference in their medieval Star Chamber. In fact, they never stopped. And now, just over 2 weeks, the president's lawyers come forward alleging an organized criminal enterprise, a conspiracy by Democrats, especially in cities controlled and corrupted by Democrats. The president's lawyers alleging a company called Dominion, which they say started in Venezuela with Cuban money and with the assistance of Smartmatic software, a backdoor is capable of flipping votes. And the president's lawyers alleging that American votes in a presidential election are actually counted in a foreign country. These are serious allegations. But the media has no interest in any of this. But you and I do, as we should, because 73 million Americans voted for Donald Trump. Republicans took seats in the House they said would be won in the Democrat blue wave that never came. And so far, we've held the Senate. They say the risk of our giving false hope should be enough to stop us. 2 weeks later, I say the risk of not looking at what is staring us in the face is too great to not stop us. Now, the president's lawyers offered evidence by way of affidavits, which I told you last Saturday as a judge from a legal perspective are sworn statements of individuals signed under penalty of perjury, meaning they know they face the penalty of prosecution and 5 years if they lie. These sworn statements are factual allegations, are part of virtually every lawsuit. It's how you start a case. The president's lawyers have indicated that they have 250 such affidavits under oath, people ready to testify, people ready to face the hate that the left has inflicted upon all of us from day one. And you know what I'm talking about. Let's not kid ourselves. There's not a lot of violence going on right out there now, because they believe they got their way. Forgive me, but I believe the only important thing is making sure that the American people and Lady Justice get their way. Consequences be damned. On Thursday, Rudy Giuliani made clear that Democrat cities were targeted by crooked Democrats who stole votes. These were cities where they were comfortable with corruption, where political corruption ran through the bloodlines of cities like Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and Detroit. He described election night numbers going in the favor of Donald Trump, but by the next morning, absurd increases in Biden votes. Curious, so many mail-in ballots for Biden with no down-ticket vote. In Atlanta, a sworn affidavit under penalty of perjury. The affiant of Fulton County Observer says she observed absentee and mail-in ballots being counted. Many of the boxes of ballots had voted for 100% Biden, 0 Trump. The ballots appeared to be perfectly filled out as if they were pre-printed, with the presidential candidate selected. Another declarant, who holds dual doctorates in economics and engineering from Stanford, states that Georgia uses Dominion voting systems, which has a history of technical glitches, and in Atlanta, these software glitches could have affected thousands of absentee mail-in ballots. On November 4, Biden received a batch of 134,886 votes at 6:30 in the morning. In Wisconsin, the day after the election, Biden received a dump of 143,000 votes at 3:42 a.m. The upshot in the graph is stunning. It suggests there was a pause and then a filling in the needed votes to win. How do we know this? He knew it through affidavits, those sworn statements where you can actually go to jail if you don't tell the truth.
I've been following this exchange between Tucker Carlson and Sidney Powell, and I'd like to sort of try to widen the scope of the inquiry a little bit, because it looks like you have these claims and counterclaims, with Tucker insisting, hey, Sidney Powell, I asked you for the evidence, and you didn't provide it to me, and I'm beginning to suspect that you don't have it.
So that's a long way of saying we took Sidney Powell seriously. We had no intention of fighting with her. We've always respected her work. We simply wanted to see the details. How could you not want to see them? So we invited Sidney Powell on the show. We would have given her the whole hour. We would have given her the entire week, actually, and listened quietly the whole time at rapt attention. That's a big story. But she never sent us any evidence, despite a lot of requests, polite requests, not a page. When we kept pressing, she got angry and told us to stop contacting her.
And Sidney Powell sort of sniping back, hey, Tucker, I gave you handouts like I gave everybody else. You didn't bother to look at them. And I don't owe you specifically any evidence, and stop calling me, and you were very rude and insulting.
No, I didn't get angry with the request to provide evidence. In fact, I sent an affidavit to Tucker that I had not even attached to a pleading yet to help him understand the situation, and I offered him another witness who could explain the mathematics and statistical evidence far better than I can. I'm not really a numbers person. But he was very insulting, demanding, and rude, and I told him not to contact me again in those terms.
And so this has gotten a little bit personal, but I want to widen the angle by asking a few key questions. Questions that, by the way, you don't need Sidney Powell to answer, because these are questions that are open for investigative reporting. I mean, the reason we have a press in this country is to apply an independent lens, a critical lens, if you will, on what is happening. Sidney Powell's focus is obviously going to be on presenting evidence in court, but it is the job of journalists to check things out and present them in the public square. So here are the questions. Number one, isn't it true that these democratic cities like Philadelphia have a long and documented history of fraud? Yes, they do. So give us the details on that. Number two, is it true that these votes of American elections are being processed, tabulated, and counted in foreign countries? It seems to be true. I'd like to know for a fact if it is true that in foreign countries, including countries hostile to us, there is an ability to process this information and possibly to manipulate it. Three, can these machines in fact be manipulated? Can they in fact flip votes? Leaving aside whether they did it in this election, is it possible for them to do it? Because think of what it means if our democracy is relying on machines that can in fact be rigged. Journalists can answer that question, but they haven't, and so far they seem to refuse to even be checking it out. Next, we have innumerable affidavits, hundreds upon hundreds of them, testifying to fraud. Affidavits are evidence. What is the value? What is the cumulative weight of this evidence? And then we have whistleblowers. Now, the whistleblowers have come forward only tentatively, but presumably they could be introduced in trial. Who are these whistleblowers? What do they have to say? Are they actually going to disclose that there was a scheme, a plan to rig this election, or to rig it at least in critical places? We'd like to know all this stuff, and you don't rely just on the Trump legal team. We have an investigative journalism community all across this country that is not doing its job.
One thing that I have done is to be pretty scrupulous about not wading into investigation decisions or prosecution decisions or decisions not to prosecute. I have tried to be really strict in my own behavior about preserving the independence of law enforcement, free from my own judgments and political assessments in some cases. And I don't know why I would stop now.
People on the left don't understand why that people on the right might believe that there was some cheating involved, considering what that they've done to this president over the last 4 years. I mean, they had SWAT teams raid the homes of the president's associates. They were secretly recording the first lady on the phone. You know, they were doxing supporters. They tried to take him out with the 25th Amendment. They spied on his campaign. They rigged the presidential debates. Remember, all of a sudden, it's not going to be in person at the last second. They're going to make it virtual. And all the money that poured in from corporate America at the last second, to think that they wouldn't even consider something like this, it boggles my mind.
You and I think nearly all of your viewers and most of the country understand what is both at stake here and what is going on here. The left is carrying out what has been a 4.5-year-long plot and effort to overthrow the President of the United States. First, as you have documented, to block his candidacy and deny him the presidency. Once he won the presidency, to overthrow his presidency. It persists to this very day. And to think of the meanness and the venality of the left is to contemplate the abyss. They have done all of this, and I really believe, Jesse, they don't care that they've been caught. The president says this time they got caught in this election, and indeed they have, all across the country, various jurisdictions, stealing and trying to steal an election. And this president is demonstrating once again he is the wrong guy to cross, the wrong guy to think you can overthrow, upend, and somehow stop with a vicious campaign, whether it's verbal, whether it is physical, whether it is what we have seen here, a cyber attack on our election, those voting machines and software. This president means to see this to the end, and that means to see it to the end of justice for these people who have
I have 3 children that are all Biden lovers. I don't know how because they went to university.
Put him up for adoption!
I'm not a good mother because I'm not a socialist mother. So I took all their Christmas gifts and cashed them all in. And I bought a cow in Africa and a llama in Indonesia and chickens in Korea. And when my kids opened their Christmas presents, there were none but an envelope to say that the llama is doing well. And they asked me, where are their gifts? And I said, I'm a socialistic mother. I shared your gifts with the world.
Cuomo's gotta go. Cuomo's gotta go. Cuomo's gotta go.
Thank you so much, everybody. We are Voices for Seniors, voicesforseniors.com. God bless every single one of you freedom fighters here today. Thank you.
Tracy State.
You watch those nature documentaries on the cable? Yeah. See the one about lions? Yeah. Got this lion. He's the king of the jungle. Huge mane out there. He's laying down under a tree in the middle of Africa. He's so big. He's so hot. He doesn't want to move. Now, the little lion comes, they start messing with him. biting his tail, biting his ears. He doesn't do anything. The lioness, she starts messing with him, coming over, making trouble. Still, nothing. Now, the other animals, they notice this. They start to move in. The jackals, hyenas, they're barking at him, laughing at him. They nip his toes, eat the food that's in his domain. They do this, and they get closer and closer and bolder, till one day, that lion gets up and tears the shit out of everybody, runs like the wind, eats everything in his path. Because every once in a while, the lion has to show the jackals who he is.
Right there.
Guantanamo Bay, which by the way, we are keeping open. And we're gonna load it up with some bad dudes, believe me, we're gonna load it up.
Justice is coming tonight. Swiftly releasing the crack in a doom. None will escape as the truth closes in. Our great Constitution is what we defend.
But you don't have a constitutional right to turn on your own government and collaborate with the enemy of the nation. You'll be treated differently.
Well. In the interest of time, excuse me, we're going to get out of here today, ladies and gentlemen. I have a lot to do. I've already got number 35 in process. Thank you for tuning in to our part 34 of our voter fraud series here at Alliday Mobile Media. Hope you're having a great Sunday. Thank you to everybody that made this podcast possible today. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you. And as I said, we are patriots. We are patriotic Americans. And please pay close attention what Dinesh D'Souza said. Go back and listen to what that man said. Very wise, very wise. I have another COVID video coming out, and I'm also going to talk a little bit about the First and Second Amendment and the Constitution. Why I'm not a constitutional scholar like Mr. Levin, I do have a pretty good grasp of the Constitution. I'm going to spell a couple things out and give you my point of view on the First and Second Amendment and why they were so important to our founding fathers. I think we're kind of finding out right now. Ladies and gentlemen, for Alliday Mobile Media, it is Ma. We're in the studio this morning. Let's have a great day. Let's all be safe out there, huh?